You're looking at the home of the Portland Timbers, where today we're sharing a side of the team you likely haven't seen before, a new coach focused entirely on mental wellness. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko at Providence Park. It's part of our ongoing series, Talk About It, our commitment to highlight the people helping break the stigma around mental health. Because for this Paralympian, it's about much more than just winning on the pitch. It's about taking care of people.
I have found in my life that I've been the first of a lot of things, and it is exciting, but it's scary and sometimes really exhausting, right? There's no model to chase after. I'm Lacey Henderson, a Paralympian, an amputee, and I'm the first mental performance coach for the Portland Timbers.
And a cancer survivor who at the age of 9 lost her right leg. Though that didn't stop her from following in her father's footsteps, eventually becoming a U.S. national champion in track and field, breaking an American record in the long jump and a world record in the pole vault. Being a woman, having a disability, being an amputee, a cancer survivor, how do you think that impacts how the team views you?
It's a very straightforward way of explaining that I also have had a complex life and that I know pain and I know struggle. Good morning.
At the Timbers practice pitch,
Come on guys, focus.
Lacey keeps a close eye on the action.
Let's go. Half of it right now, since it's new for me still, is like learning soccer.
Though as an athlete who co-hosted NBC's Paralympic coverage from Paris,
That it's not para-Olympian, it's Paralympian.
and who is now navigating her own retirement,
Uh-oh. Did I make all the wrong decisions in my entire life leading up to this point? Should I have done different?
I have anxiety. I think a lot of it may be PTSD from cancer.
those feelings are pretty universal. What do you do to take care of your own mental health?
Well, I'm still working with a sports psychologist. What's unique about sports specifically is like you put your body on the line every day for a career that's typically a pretty short window, and you feel like an island a lot of times. Let's go!
And as the team's first certified mental performance consultant some 6 months in,
The idea is to build emotional endurance while it gets really hard.
Lacey's working to improve the way the players and other coaches connect with each other
Yes, I do.
and with themselves.
The potential for high performance happens when you are doing well mentally. We're not just a head floating above a body, right? They need to be connected.
And perhaps her biggest cheerleader, head coach Phil Neville.
You talk about the technical side of the game, the tactical side of the game. For me, that's probably only a small percentage. The mental side of the game is more important.
Because he remembers what it was like to be a superstar. And at the age of 23, playing for Manchester United, what it was like to struggle.
I had the talent, I had the ability, I had won games, I played at the biggest level, but I stopped having fun. I went in to see the psychologist and I was nervous. I thought I was weak. I didn't want anyone to know.
Though talking about it, he says, changed the course of his career.
It became not a stigma for me. It became one of my superpowers. Going to see that psychologist, I shouldn't have been embarrassed about. I think that is something that I now preach as a coach.
You need to see Lacey.
Yeah, todo está bien?
It's almost as if you're normalizing it in a way.
Literally, that is what it is. At the start, there was 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and now there is 2 feet in.
Well, we'll just start where we are right now. Let's take a breath in together.
In the Timbers locker room,
There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to be.
Lacey guides us through a grounding exercise. The team now does this before every game to clear their minds
This is your safe space whenever you need it.
and focus on the moment.
I get 2 minutes. I get about 2. Every now and then I'll squeeze in 3.
2 minutes?
Yeah, 2 minutes can make a difference. It's not about the amount of time you spend. This is consistently showing up. So even if it's just one breath, being still, that's mindfulness. That's doing the work. That's practice.
And as we head to the sidelines, what's the feeling you get when you walk out here?
It's a moment of peace.
We learn Lacey's new role is about much more than just performance on the pitch.
I'm trying to allow the moments where an athlete can just accept where they are.
Teaching the Timbers a whole new language around mental wellness. At least start the conversation, maybe even change that conversation.
Yes,
too.
yep.
That can help them grow and evolve, not only as players,
It's a balance, it's a dance.
but as people.
One, it's a message to the athletes that it's something they should take serious for themselves. And two, it's a message, I think, for the league, for greater sports in general, that this needs to be prioritized. I think it's important to talk about it because it's better out than in, baby. If you can name it, you can tame it. And I think that's the work, is just talking.
So for now, that might look like meditation, Lacey says, post-game mental debriefs and one-on-one sessions with members of the team. You know, we heard a little bit from head coach Phil Neville there about the ups and downs of his own career and also why he believes it's so important to invest in the mental health of his players. And coach told me that he thinks Lacey is the perfect fit for this role since, in his words, she's overcome more challenges in her life than anyone else he's ever spoken to. Here's more from our conversation, including what he's asked Lacey to do as the Timbers' first mental performance coach.
The canvas was blank, so I said to her, look, the canvas is blank, let's build a mental health program, and that takes time. So the first 6 weeks was all about observing the environment, connecting with people, seeing where her role fit in with departments. We meet every day at 7:45, me and Lacey, and talk through. My big thing from a head coach's point of view is the culture, the players, the mental well-being of the players, the culture of the team, the mental performance of the team. We plan training sessions. We plan training sessions for 2-3 months in advance, purely from a physical and technical point of view. But now we're planning training sessions from a mental point of view as well. When people talk about periodization, there is a mental performance periodization here, and it's taken time to get people to buy into it. But I'd say we're 2-3 months in now, and I'm just beginning to feel like we're getting there.
What have you noticed?
Well, we meditate before games. So before I do my final speech, we meditate. The first meditation session we did in pre-season, I said, like, we're going to hit the ground running. First, it's 3 hours before the game, we come in a room. Normally I do my tactics, name the team. I said, right guys, Lacey, over to you. And we go through breath work, we go through meditation skills, we go through breathing exercises. And macho men, being macho men, there's a couple with their eyes open thinking that everyone's laughing at them because they're breathing and they're concentrating on the breath work. And there's a few sniggers maybe because people have this, this persona, but then it just became a part of what we did. And then we did mental debriefs after games, which they have to go into a room in their units and write a few notes about how they were before, during and after the game. And like I say, at the start there was 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and now there is 2 feet in because there's been consistent, and there is an awareness now around the group that mental performance is a big part of the performance bracket.
It's almost as if you're normalizing it in a way.
Literally, that is what it is.
So the team is obviously a business coach. You want to win.
Yeah.
Is this role, though, just about performance and winning?
No, it is about performance, but it's also about well-being, and it's about health, because there is so much pressure, expectation, demands, stress when you want to be an elite athlete, is that you've also got to look after the human being as well. And I think a large part of Lacey's role is looking after the human being, about the well-being, the health and the mental health of a I won't say an athlete, of a person, of a staff member, of a player, and I think that is probably equally as important as the performance side.
This whole old school sort of sports culture, and maybe it's not old school, maybe it still exists in a lot of places, but this idea of like push through it, perfectionism, like really high expectations, maybe they're expectations you place on yourself. How do you start combating that?
There is still a stigma. I felt it, I felt it because this is new to the MLS. Mental health performance is new to the MLS. We've got 2 or 3 players that have worked in environments that have their own psychologist that they speak to, but there is a big stigma. People see the office that she works in as like you go there to get fixed, where you shouldn't go there to get fixed. You go there to improve.
That's how the team sees it right now. Or
Well,
some
I'd say at
players
the
see
start that was the stigma. That's the stigma in probably sports still. But I think what we've done is we've made it where it's become part of our training. It's no different than going and seeing a physio. It's no different than going and seeing a technical coach do some passing. And she's become part of, I call her a coach. I don't call her a mental performance coach. I call her one of my assistant coaches, because she's equally as important as my assistant coach, because she helps the team in probably the most important facet of performance, mental.
Is there something in your own experience or personal background that's made you ready to buy into this and ready to be a leader?
Yeah, I grew up in an age where you got kicked, you got back up, get on with it. Stop moaning, get on with it. You get dropped, you suffer disappointments, you go through adversity. Then what you moaning at? Just get on with it. Stop moaning. Stop being a baby. And then at the age of 23, I was playing at top level, Manchester United, and I was struggling. Literally, I was struggling. I wasn't enjoying myself. The biggest one was I wasn't enjoying myself. I had the talent, I had the ability, I had won games, I played at the biggest level, but I stopped having fun. And my father came up to me one day and said, "What's going on?" And he said, you don't look like you're having fun. You're playing for Manchester United, you're playing for England. You look like you're suffering. I said, I am. I'm not having fun. So the club had a psychologist at the time, and literally the next day I went in to see the psychologist, and I was nervous. I thought I was weak. I didn't want anyone to know. It was meet me at 3 o'clock when everyone had gone, and I went in there, and I never forget. I spoke for literally 1.5 hours, and at the end of it, he said something to me that then propelled me for the next phase of my life. He went, "You're not having fun." He said, "So every time you go out on a pitch now, the only thing I want you to concentrate on is at the end of the game, you come off and said, you've had fun, and you have a smile on your face." And that was my mental training, is that I had to play with a smile on my face and come off at the end, win, lose or draw, with a smile on my face. And I'd say that my career went upwards, and I was already playing to a really good level. Then all of a sudden it became about fun. I was suffering, think fun. And that after an 1.5 hour talk, that's what it came out with, and it was life changing for something so simple that nobody'd ever told me.
What else do you wish you'd had as a player that you hope you can now provide as a coach?
As a player, I wish I had the environment now, is that going to see that psychologist, I shouldn't have been embarrassed about. I think that is something that I now preach as a coach, is something that's really important. That's why I have Lacey in every single meeting. She's an assistant coach. You go and see the goalkeeping coach if you wanna improve your goalkeeping. There's forwards coach. This coach will improve you on another aspect of your play. So I think having that confidence and not that stigma of thinking that going seeing this person was a sign of my weakness. Because I mean, maybe 12 months after I started seeing this psychologist, I then realised that actually I was actually improving. I was different than the rest because I was brave enough to go and see this guy, and it became not a stigma for me. It became one of my superpowers.
Culture starts at the top. So what do you do from a mental wellness perspective to take care of yourself now?
Wow. I think when you're in a position of being a leader, you tend to look after everybody else before you. So I want to make sure that my staff are okay, the players especially are okay, and I say that I'm the bottom of the pile. But what do? I make sure that I try and have an evening meal with my daughter and children every single night. That's a fundamental part of my family values. If I'm ever feeling like I need something that's going to help me from a mental point of view, I go for a walk with my wife. I switch off my phone, which is my phone is the biggest source of my mental probably weakness, because as a manager you're 24/7, everyone wants to contact you. There's the expectation to reply to every email that comes in your way, and so that for me is a mental sort of like switch off, and then just being around my children and my wife is the most important thing.
Do you find a moment of calm before the game? Do you find that 2 or 3 minutes with Lacey's helping?
Do you know, that bit, and then when the players go out onto the pitch, for the warm-up, and everybody's doing their job, running around, and I'm the only one in the stadium that's got nothing to do, right? Because I've done my bit, and so I go and sit in my office, and I have this little routine. I FaceTime my son. My son's a footballer. He's a professional footballer. I FaceTime him, and we just talk about anything, and that for me is almost my switch off time. The breath work, the meditation bit is something that I do in private, in silence, after my training. But I'd say that it's a big part of how I prepare myself to be able to be mentally strong at the most important moments.
Do you find that you sort of deal with anxiety, motivation, confidence as a coach now too, at all?
I think the thing as a coach is you sometimes have doubts. You question some of your decisions. You go into some games and think, have I done the right thing? Have I picked the right players? Have I handled the situation well? And all these are going through your mind 24/7. And sometimes you go into games and you don't always have the answer. And I think to accept that is actually a really powerful thing.
Okay, let's return to Lacey's story now and some of the other roles she's taken on, so to speak. Being an outspoken advocate for athletes with disabilities and people with disabilities more broadly, and also carving a new path when it comes to what retiring from the pros can look like. Here's more from our conversation, starting with this Instagram post, why she thinks it's important for her to be a, quote, visibly public disabled woman, those are her words, in mainstream men's professional sports.
I have wrestled with these conversations we see like in social media and regular media about representation. And I think what I've seen, especially disabled people, especially women of color, it's almost like we get stuck. Like in my opinion, like we've plateaued in certain areas, right? Like I worked in Paris Paralympics. Like we're starting now to see representation, but almost still within the marginalized silo. So it was like disabled people representing themselves, which is important. But I'm ready. I'm ready to move forward. I think we need to see people that have experienced life in the margins in mainstream areas. I think that's really what true representation is seeing people who are different in important roles.
So for you, this is a major breakthrough and a breaking of whatever that ceiling.
Yeah, I really do. I feel like that I finally kind of like broke through that ceiling for me. I didn't realize at the time, as a Paralympian, even covering the Paralympics, it started to dawn on me that we were still being kind of pushed into these corners. And for me, being a disabled woman in a professional men's sport feels really expansive.
But I'm just curious, how does working in a heavily male team environment impact your work? Like, what have you noticed? What's been different? What's been unexpected?
One of my first meetings with the athletes, I was talking about a nervous system response and stress appraisal and getting ready on these stress spectrums. Where are you on it's like arousal factor. So I started that early, and they were like,
how are you feeling in this particular moment? Are you feeling
showing a graph? Yeah, exactly. And being like, okay, when I'm ready to perform, what level of anxiety or stress or arousal is what we use in sports psychology as far as language. Like, where are you feeling when you have your best performance? And so this inverted U diagram, science stuff. And I could see their eyes were like, whoa, like it was just like, and one of the players was like,
science.
And I did it in English and Spanish, and so I was so ready. And one of the players came up to me and he's like, it's not you, we're just new at this. And that was a good reminder for me. And it was something that I realized, not just soccer. So every sport has their own identity and culture and kind of like cerebral approaches. And what I'm learning, because I haven't been in mostly male environments as far as sport, I've been in a lot of co-ed environments and women's teams, and worked with women's athletes, worked with some males, but in a private practice, your athletes are coming to you. In an integrated team, you're just kind of in the team delivering. And so there's a different level of even wanting to learn, there's a different level of competency and what I like to call mental health literacy. And what I realized with men especially, culturally, both northern and southern hemisphere, I don't think that there is enough rearing from children to adults where men are speaking about the range of emotions that they can experience. And I think as far as athletes are concerned, we can experience anger, rage, stress, probably not sadness. So there's just limited emotions, and there's limited language around the emotional experience for men that I'm learning. And so I'm adjusting kind of like where are we starting on the mental health literacy and slowly getting both English and Spanish and other language speakers to have a consistent communication on what an emotional experience is. And so I'm so excited to get to the high level stuff, but right now it's like we need to just level set on who we are right now, what level we're at right now, and slowly start creating a language around that.
Do you think there's stigma around mental health when it comes to sports right now?
Absolutely, there's stigma around mental health, especially in sports.
What do you see?
I see, even still, like you see a lot of people view mental health as like if you have a problem, then you go fix it. There's not a lot of proactive care.
You might say, sports culture, this idea of really high expectations, maybe unrealistic expectations, pursuit of perfection, whatever perfection means. Like, how do you balance that culture with what you're trying to bring here?
Yeah. I think that high performance, there's never a perfect match. There's never a perfect practice. Perfectionism, though, is rampant with high performers. This is something we're always striving towards, but I think I've been recently reading some research and it's kind of organized our brains into 3 different facets. So there's threat and protect. So that's like fight or flight. Again, this self-protection measure. And then there's this ambition and this striving, always going for perfection, reaching for the top, this level of mastery. But the third section is like contentment and joy. And I think some of our best performances, the closest we ever get to perfect, is when we are practicing from a place of joy and openness. And it's hard because perfection's really rigid because there's an expectation associated with it. And I think when you can kind of open yourself up to something more, you can surprise yourself, and who knows where the ceiling of performance can be when you allow yourself to be a little bit more free.
How do you convey that to the team?
A lot of it, I think right now, because of the level we're at, is working on, and when we talk about mindfulness, working on this acceptance part, the acceptance with no judgment. And that's really hard in sports because sports is seemingly simple, right? You win or you lose, like you're first or you're last. You're first or you're not first, maybe not last, but there's these clear parameters in sport, and we associate judgment with that, and that's just what the brain does. It's a survival mechanism, but I'm trying to allow the moments where an athlete can just accept where they are, including where their bodies are, if you have an injury or even just a slight discomfort, because that just happens, especially in sport, it's a part of it. And building this level of acceptance without judgment, because when we kind of reinforce that, we make faster and smarter decisions on the field. We make better decisions in our families.
We talk about sports being a business at the end of the day, especially professional sports, but is what you do just about performance, and why or why not?
Me personally, no, I don't think this is just about performance. This is about taking care of people. It's caring for people, and that, again, speaking to the Timbers, that is something that a lot of us were philosophically in alignment for, is that when you see an athlete do something that you know that we've been working on together, there is no greater feeling. If I could bottle that up and sell that, I'd be a gajillionaire. It is so much more than just performance. Performance is a byproduct of well-being.
Okay. And what are the other byproducts then?
I mean, the byproducts is happy people, happy families, being able to show up. There's no greater wish that I have for some of my guys that are dads to be able to leave training or leave a match and just be the best dad and feel really, really good when they're with their families, feel like they can be present.
That was my question for you, is how does what you're doing here translate off the field as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have joked for a long time that, life is the performance, but it's true. We have to show up. I'm not a parent, I'm a dog parent, but we have to show up for our people, and it's not just on the team, it's our people in our family, it's all these other parts of ourselves. And so for me, it really is, I think, again, it's when we can kind of combine all of these different versions of ourselves, and we can really be stable in who we are on the pitch, and we can be stable with who we are at home. There's a level of consistency and just higher level presence that I think just gives off in dividends that really you can give back to your family. It's kind of like the trickle down effect when you can be your best self.
How does your approach here differ, you think? And I'm not just talking about the Timbers, but more broadly in professional sports. How does your approach in having you here differ or make a change from the way it's been?
Yeah, I think that for a really, really long time, when mental performance was kind of new, and still for some other teams, again, like the approach is just performance. We just want them to perform. We just want to get goals. Running it as a business, right? And there is nothing wrong with that, but that is not my approach, because I want to treat the high performance as a byproduct of people just doing really, really well, being really, really healthy. I think a lot of, especially in our country, the conversation around mental health has been reactive, because we've seen athletes who have taken their own lives, who have had really bad experiences, especially post-career, and we didn't protect them and we didn't take care of them. And so I think when we can kind of insulate and create really healthy, really strong people, body and mind, there's so much more that can come from that.
At least start the conversation, maybe even change that conversation
Yes,
too.
yep.
And she's just getting started. We'll be watching. By the way, if you're looking for mental health support for yourself or maybe for someone you care about, head to kgw.com/talk. You'll find a list of local services and numbers to call, many of those available 24/7. Again, that's kgw.com/talk. And know that whatever it is, you're not alone. For all of us at KGW, I'm David Molko, reminding you that there is strength, growth, and resilience when we have the courage to talk about it.